Very good morning to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So, as you all know, this session we are going to have some discussion on exploitation techniques. Now, if you talk about the different methods of exploitation or the different techniques, which include the spoofing, man-in-the-middle attacks, password cracking, trojans, malwares, denial of service, and many more. In fact, it's an infinite topic, you can say in a way. Now, coming back to the spoofing, first, obviously, we'll talk about IP spoofing. Then we'll go have a discussion, short discussion of MAC spoofing, followed by email spoofing, SMS, caller ID spoofing, website spoofing. I mean, over here, I basically mean the way of different ways of phishing attacks. Then Gpa spoofing as well. Now, if we talk about IP spoofing, fundamentally, it is a creation of Internet Protocol packets which have a modified source address in order to either hide the identity of the sender or to impersonate another computer system, or sometimes it may serve both purposes. It is a technique often used by the attackers to invoke distributed denial of service kind of an attack against a target device or the surrounding infrastructure. Sending and receiving IP packets is primary way in which network computers and other devices communicate, as we understand, and they constitute the basic of modern internet. All IP packets contains a header which precedes the body of the packet and contains important routing information, which include source address. In a normal packet, the source IP address is the address of the sender of the packet. If the packet has been spoofed, the source address will be changed, obviously with a forged one. Now, IP spoofing is analogous to an attacker sending a package to someone with the wrong return address listed. If the person receiving the package wants to stop the sender from sending package, blocking all package from the bogus address will, in fact, won't be much helpful in this case, as the return address is easily changed. Relatedly, if the receiver wants to respond to a return address, their response package will go somewhere other than the real sender. The ability to spoof the addresses of packet is the core vulnerability exploited by many denial of service attacks. Now, denial of service attacks often utilize spoofing with the goal of overwhelming a target with traffic while masking the identity of the malicious source, preventing all mitigation efforts in that during the procedure. If the source IP address is falsified and continuously randomized, blocking malicious requests becomes, in fact, very difficult. And IP spoofing also makes it tough for the law enforcement and the cybersecurity teams to track down the perpetrator of the attack. As because, spoofing, and that's the reason you can say the spoofing is also used for deception as another device so that response are sent to the targeted devices. Now, what are the protections against IP spoofing? I mean, how we can be safe from that? One, obviously, you can say packet filtering. Now, while IP spoofing can be prevented, measures can be taken to stop spoof packet from infiltrating a network. A very common defense against spoofing is ingress filtering. You can have the outline of the ingress filtering in Cisco documentation is basically BCP 38. BCP stands for Best Common Practice. It's available in the Google. You can always Google it and download it. Now, ingress filtering is basically a form of packet filtering usually implemented on a network edge device, which examines the input IP packets and look at their source headers. If the source headers on those packets don't match their origin or they otherwise look suspectable or fishy, those packets are rejected. Some networks may also implement egress filtering. I mean, if ingress were for the incoming packets, egress is for the outgoing packets. Effectively, I mean, it looks at the IP packets exiting from the network, ensuring that those packets have legitimate source headers to prevent someone within the network from launching an outbound malicious attack using IP spoofing. Now coming back to MAC spoofing. MAC spoofing is a technique for changing the factory assigned media access control address of a network interface or on a network device. The MAC address is that sometimes it's hard coded on the network interface controller or NIC. I mean, in colloquially, what we call the network card, in fact. If it is hard coded, then it cannot be changed physically. However, many drivers allow the MAC address to be spoofed, or rather changed virtually. Additionally, there are tools which can make the operating system believe that the network card has the MAC address of user's choice. The spoofed one, right? The process of masking a MAC address is known the MAC spoofing. Essentially, MAC spoofing involves changing the computer's identity for any reason, and in fact, it's relatively easy as well. Now, it has got certain purposes. I mean, changing the assigned MAC address may allow the user to bypass the access control list on the servers and routers, either hiding a computer on a network or allowing it to impersonate another network device. MAC spoofing is done for sometimes legitimate, sometimes illegal purposes as well. I mean, fundamentally, one of the reason is the new hardware for existing ISP. Sometimes ISP maintains the keep the MAC address fixed for an internet connection, so for their billing purposes and all. So in that meantime, if you change your hardware, you might go through some procedures to re-register your device and so on and so forth. To avoid that, sort of labor or harassment, whatever you may call it, sometimes MAC addresses are spoofed. And also fulfilling the software requirement. As we all understand, many software tools, including Windows operating system, the registration is essentially done against the MAC ID, a MAC address. Now, if I'm using a computer with a licensed operating system, in the meantime, if I have to change the hardware of the computer, obviously the authentic way of it is to let your software company know about that you have changed the hardware and so on and so forth. But once again, to avoid those aspects, people do spoof the MAC ID of it. Third is a no-brainer, obviously, identity masking. And frankly speaking, the fourth point is MAC address randomization in Wi-Fi. That's a feature which has been adopted by companies like Apple as well as Microsoft as well. I mean, because MAC ID often discloses the identity of the hardware device. So I guess if I'm not completely wrong, it started from 2014. For Apple, and from 2015, I mean the year Windows 10 came into market, they also adopted that feature in their system. Now coming to the next point, that is cross-site scripting. Now, if we look at it, cross-site scripting, or simply we sometimes call it XSS, this is a client-side code injection attack. The attacker aims to execute malicious script in a web browser of the victim by including malicious code in the legitimate web page or a web application. The actual attack occurs when the victim visits the web page or web application that executes the malicious code. The web page or the web application becomes a vehicle to deliver the malicious script to the user's browser. Vulnerable vehicles, obviously, here I mean the web applications or the web pages that are commonly used for the cross-site scripting attacks are, message boards, web pages that allow comments, sometimes even forums as well. Okay. A web page or web application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting if it uses unsanitized user input in the output and it generates. The user input must then be, parsed by the victim's browser. XSS attacks are possible in VBScript, ActiveX, Flash, and even CSS. However, they are most common in JavaScript primarily because JavaScript is the fundamental to most browsing experiences. Now, there are essentially two types of cross-site scripting which you come across. One is the stored cross-site scripting, and another one is the reflected one. If we try to understand from a colloquially, I mean, stored is generally for one-time use kind of a thing, and reflected is for multiple use of an attack. Now, stored cross-site scripting generally occurs when the user inputs is stored on a target server, such as a database, in a message forum, visitor log, common, etc. And then a victim is able to retrieve the stored data from the web application without the data being made safe to render in the browser. With the advent of HTML5 and other browser technologies, we can envision the attack payload becoming permanently stored in the victim browser, such as an HTML5 database, and never being sent to the server at all. Here comes the reflected attack. Sometimes, I mean, the stored attacks are also called persistent or type 1 kind of XSS attack, and this reflected one are sometimes called non-persistent or type 2 attack. The second category, this non-persistent one, occurs when the user input is immediately returned by a web application in an error message, search result, or any other response that includes some or all of the inputs provided by the user as part of the request, without the data being made safe to render in the browser, and without permanently storing the user provided data. In some cases, the user provided data may never leave the browser at all. Now coming the next part, Gpa spoofing. I hope that image is at present visible. Many of you, rather all of you, are accustomed with. That's a image I have taken from the very famous game Pokemon Go. If you are not aware about this game, it's basically when you walk around, not cycling or being in a car, putting this application on your mobile phone. These tiny cartoonish creatures will keep on appearing on your mobile phone. You have to store them. That's it. I mean, no monetary reward, nothing. It's just the more these animals you can store, the more points you get. Now, there's a catch line. All of a sudden, that game was in the news of BBC. Pokemon Go players banned for cheating. Now, why it is so important? We have to understand how this game actually works. It basically tracks your GPS location, and obviously the speed of change of your GPS location determines whether you are moving by walking or by running, or maybe whether you are in a car or some vehicle, whatever it is, right? So effectively, just to gain more points in this game, in this particular game, people have started using GPS spoofing applications, which are essentially spoofing their respective handset with false GPS information. End of the day, I mean, the game was also assuming that even being stationed in one place, that person was walking around. Now, why this silly instance of cheating is we are discussing over here. Now, before getting into that, let us replace this Pokemon Go game with maybe your Uber or Ola app. It may happen in sometimes. I mean, there have been certain case studies that imagine you are in a new city. You are moving in a cab. As per the GPS location information available in your handset, you are moving towards the right direction, but actually you are not. Meanwhile, your GPS information has been spoofed. You may say that in this slide I was talking about GPS spoofing apps. Obviously, those apps has to be downloaded in my mobile, to get a wrong or spoofed GPS information. Actually, it isn't. It can be spoofed in many ways other than these GPS spoofing apps altogether. Now, basically, GPS satellite, just hang on for a second. I'm having some issue with okay, yeah. GPS satellite broadcasts some microwave signals to the receiver to determine the location. If we look at it, how it actually works, at one time, first of all, as I've said, I've used that word judiciously, the broadcasting. It's not your mobile is communicating to any of those GPS satellites. It's receiving GPS information from satellites. And at one point of time, a mobile phone, at least, I mean, mobile phone or any other GPS device, receives signals from 4 or more GPS satellites simultaneously. Okay, and those broadcasting actually happens in an atomic clock speed. I mean, time difference are there, but it's very almost impossible to determine by a by a human mind physically. Okay, so how the way your location is tracked? I mean, as because simultaneously your GPS device is receiving signal from 4 different satellites, the time gap of receiving signals from each of those satellites is due to the distance between you and the satellite. And that time gap, once again, which is in atomic clock, determines your physical location. Now, as I have said in the second point, that 4 signals are available for civilian use in GPS: L1, L2C, L5, and L1C. Now, these signals are open, unencrypted. You understand? I mean, any damn device, any damn mobile phone can get access to a GPS signal, and it's obviously unencrypted. And it's a very common scenario. It's just like the reason we don't see moon in the daylight, because obviously sun is more brighter. Similarly, if we can artificially generate a signal with same frequency but with some more power into it, my GPS device will communicate with that spoofed signal, not the original one. And that's the way GPS can be spoofed. And in fact, it can be done at a device using very simple application, and sometimes using a very small piece of hardware as well. Okay. Now, GPS spoofing, apart from those, cheating in some mobile game or some, beg your pardon, fictitious kidnapping attempt, now it has gone serious. Now I will show you some series of events, or should I follow the latest trend of public speaking, chronological samjiye kind of a thing. Now see, there was a news that Iran hijacked US drone. The second news is the US president has requested or asked Iran to return their drone aircraft. Iran says no to returning US drone, but hints at a deal. And finally, they came up with a copy of that captured US drone. Now, how it was done? We have to understand. See, before that, we were talking about civilian GPS. Now, for military GPS, those are encrypted and completely separate from the civilian use, right? And those are encrypted as well. Now, we understand all these drones are unmanned, aerial vehicle, or even any vehicle working in terms of need some geolocation services. If it's for military use, they use encrypted GPS signal. And even those GPS signals can be spoofed and has been spoofed. Example is in front of your eyes. I mean, this US drone obviously was moving ahead for purpose of spying, if I'm not completely wrong. and it was using that military GPS signal which had been spoofed, and it was landed in some unknown airport of Iran, and they have done the reverse engineering and made a copy of it. Now the point is, till now, till a few days back, only a handful of countries have their own GPS technology. When you say US, Russia, and China. Now, any other countries who had to use military grade GPS devices, military GPS information, they were actually dependent on those countries. And quite obviously, their devices, their armory, be it a missile or be it a drone or something like that, there is a possibility of being spoofed by the, I'm using this word, I may not be politically or grammatically correct, but I mean GPS service provider in a way. I mean the country, right? So there is a huge risk involved. I mean there is a security concern involved in terms of our any countries, drones, military grade drones or weaponries like missiles and so forth. So then comes the latter part of this story. We have our own GPS system, and it has been approved by the International Maritime Organization as well, and it names the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, IRNSS. Now the next we are coming is to email spoofing. Email spoofing is a creation of email message with a forced sender address or fake sender address. It is the fabrication of an email header in the hopes of duping the recipient into thinking that email originated from someone or somewhere other than the intended source. Because core email protocols, I mean SMTP, do not have any inbuilt method of authentication. It is commonplace for spamming and phishing mails to use solid spoofing to trick the recipient into trusting the origin of the message. Obviously, the ultimate goal of email spoofing is to get recipient to open and possibly even respond to a solicitation. Although the spoof messages are usually just a nuisance, requiring very little action beside removal or deletion of them, the more malicious varieties can cause significant problems and sometimes pose a real security threat. Email spoofing is possible because as I've said, that SMTP does not provide any mechanism for address authentication. Although email address authentication protocols and mechanisms have been developed to combat email spoofing. Adaptation of those mechanisms has been very low par, even today. Now, what are the reasons of email spoofing? Obviously, hiding the sender's true identity. Though if it is the only goal, it can be achieved more easily by registering anonymous email addresses. Another purpose may be avoiding spam, block list. If the sender is spamming, they are bound to be blocked by, and their name may appear in some block list very quickly. A simple solution to this problem is to switch the email addresses, right? It may also be done for the purpose of pretending to be someone the recipient knows in order to, for example, ask for some sensitive information, to access personal asset, maybe financial details and so forth. Tarnishing the message, the image of the, assumed sender. It may be some defamation kind of an attempt. Okay. So that, I mean, the victim can be shown in some so-called bad light or bad imagery kind of a thing. Now, sending message in someone's name can also be used to commit identity theft. For example, by requesting information from a victim's financial or healthcare account, maybe some other official information, data kind of a thing. Now, here are a few examples where fake mails can be sent. I mean, some of those services may ask for certain paid membership. Some of them are free. Over there, you can straight away, you don't need to in fact open any mail ID. You can pretend to be anyone and send email to anyone. Now, how to verify email sender? I hope this slide actually explains a lot of things. I mean, you need to, whenever you open a suspicious email, you need to open the header file of it. Now, here is a problem. As you understand, I mean, I'm not repeating those aspects. From header file, we try to track down the sender's IP address. But however, if a header file looks like this, sometimes it becomes very complicated or difficult to know or to identify the actual IP address of a sender. Now, different email service providers has got some different practices in terms of services, in terms of showing their respective IP address. Now, number one, Gmail services that omit the sender IP addresses from these headers. Instead, only the IP address of Gmail's mail server is shown in the receipt form point. Okay, and it is impossible to find a sender's true IP address in received Gmail ID. However, in that case, if you at least come across that the email was originated from an IP address which is being owned by Gmail, then you can at least have some confidence that, okay, that ID is not a fake one, right? Now, how to check for the owner of the IP address? I mean, simple whois search will do. Microsoft Hotmail or Outlook mail service provides an extended header line called X originating IP that contains the sender's actual IP address. Emails from Yahoo contains the sender IP address in the last received entry. Now, it may also have multiple receipt lines. I mean, multiple receipt lines, receipt form lines may appear because, I mean, the message is passing through multiple email servers. Email spammers insert additional fake receipt form lines into the header to confuse recipient. To find the correct address starting from the last receipt form line and trace the path taken by the message by traveling up through the header. The by sending location listed inside receipt header should match with the form receiving location listed in the next receipt header below. If there is any gap, then you can easily, omit that part, or you can easily identify that as a fake entry. Now, disregard any entries that contains domain names not matching with the rest of the header chain. The last receipt from the line containing valid information is the one that contains the sender's true address. Many spammers send their email directly rather than through internet email service. In these cases, all receipt from headers lines except the first one will be fake. The last receipt from header line then will contain the sender's true IP address in this scenario. The first, beg your pardon, not the last. Now, how to verify email senders? Once again, coming back to the same pictography. I mean, after following all these tips and tricks we just shared, we discussed during the last two slides, it was it was discovered that from that 196.1.113.117, that is the source mail ID. I mean, from where this particular email in question was originated. Now, another problem. Beyond this spoofed email, while sending an email, we are also facing the privacy policy of our respective email service provider. There's an example of Google which says, when you upload, submit, store, send, or receive content, you grant us a worldwide license to use, host, store, reproduce, modify, create, derivative works, communicate, publish, publicly perform, publicly display, and distribute such content. Our automated system analyzes your content, including emails, to provide you personally relevant product features. We may display your profile name, profile photo, and action you take on Google or any other third-party application connected to your Google account. If you submit feedback or suggestion about our service, we may use your feedback or suggestion without any obligation to you. That is a serious privacy concern. I mean, these points may appear a little bit surprising to some of you, but believe me, whatever free web service you might be using, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, or any other web service, all of them are having similar kind of privacy policy. Basically, you rarely have some privacy. That's their policy. So people have came with an idea of sending emails with hidden messages. Just a second. I'm having some trouble with it. Okay. One of such services is spamming. If you go to their website and you want to send a hidden message, you just need to click on that encode button. It will open a space to write your secret message. Let it be IIES ship code. Encode that, and it will generate an email body which will have effectively have no contextual mapping with the actual message. It appears like so those typical spam emails or maybe promotional emails kind of a thing, right? The next thing is, I mean, while time of sending this message, I will straight away copy this content, paste on the email body, and send it. Now, as you can see, during this experiment, this message was delivered in my inbox, not in the spam box. Okay. Anyways, if I want to retrieve what actual message was, straight away copy the email body, go to the spam mimic site, paste it over there. After clicking on decode, once again paste the decode, I get the message back. Now, just if any one of you are in the point of being assigned with the job of investigating someone's emails, we have to deal with certain investigation. At least we have to train with law enforcement agencies. An email analysis or email, even for both for the purpose of collecting intelligence as well as evidence is a very common practice. I mean, you know it from your common sense in fact. So, but if an inbox is having few thousand of emails, very often we try to, we ought to omit out those spam emails and those promotional mails and so forth. But you never know. Even a mail which appears to be a promotional email or a spam mail, in reality may not be actually like that. It may contain certain hidden messages into it. Now we are coming to email address verification. For that, we'll use this online tool called Mail Tester. Over there, you have to, register your account. You can also, do it continuing with your Google or Facebook account. Okay. By the way, with free account of it, you will have, limited facility. Now over there, if you have an entire list of email IDs, maybe it's some, as you can see over there. Can you see my mouse pointer? My movement of my mouse pointer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now over there, you can see that you can upload an entire Excel sheet, or it may be a CSV file kind of a thing. Drop over there, and straight away click on searching, it will analyze and give you the result. Okay. If you want to do a single check, I mean checking a single mail ID, once again, you type that mail ID over there, click on check, and it will give you the result. It can also find someone else's email address. Say for an example over there, I've used my colleague's name, Anupam and Chanda, with a domain name of gmail.com. And if I click on this find email addresses, I mean, I have taken this screenshot in between of their process, but I hope you get the idea. I mean, here are the possible mail addresses, or rather, people having similar, same name are having those addresses. And if you are looking for absolute privacy in email, nobody can do anything with your content, even if your identity. You can use dark web email services as well. Obviously, for that you have to install the Tor browser. And incidentally, as you know, in dark web, I mean, each and every service operates at .onion extension, are onion sites, and the URLs of onion sites is very difficult to remember. So every now and then you have to take help of the hidden wiki or their own, search engine, that is DuckDuckGo or Torch or like that. As a list of few email services, dark web email services like Secure Mail or Mailpile, Proton Mail. Those are one of the few very well-known and dark web mailing services. Now coming to the security breach. Effectively, security breach can happen by two different approaches. One is obviously breach the system, which is relatively harder. Number two, breaching the user. You have to understand the fundamental, how phishing, other than the technical part of it, how phishing is different from hacking. While hacking, my primary attack is against a system. But when I'm launching a phishing attack, I'm actually trying to brain hack my human victim, right? Trying to make him believe that a false thing as a true one. So that's the fundamental difference, right? Now, in this regard, if you talk about identity theft, or more specifically password theft, the most common method of password theft is simply guessing. There is a birthday paradox. In statistic, it is said that if there are 43 people in the room, there is 50% chance that at least two of them will have same birthdays. Okay. Similarly, if we talk about people's password, you may be surprised to know that Facebook has published a report which says 70% of their total users, and believe me, Facebook is having the third highest population just after China and India, are using passwords, altogether 10 passwords. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or maybe password, the phrase password itself, or I love football, so and so forth. There are a few very common ones. And even when some systems, sometimes in the official mails or some ERP systems, they require frequent change of password, sometimes maybe monthly. And we think that we are smart enough and make it as if I have to change this system to today, then the password demands March @2021. The next one's password is April @2021. And you know it, you think you're smart, everybody in this world is smart. Okay. easily guessable. Another very common password is admin. Okay. Then there is a tendency, I mean, those are passwords which are commonly used. And then there are tendencies of people keeping, I mean, their mobile phone as a password, or sometimes they came out, they generate password using their own personal information. It might be their date of birth, might be anniversary, might be child date of birth, might be have to do their vehicle registration number, maybe native place, all this social information. They generate password using their social information. Now, you can easily guess if someone stalks your Facebook profile itself, many of those informations are available. And believe me, there are tools available if we use those password cracking tools. Over there, you can set up keywords, okay, as your phrase. And it helps them to recover the passwords quicker. Okay. Now, another way of exploitation is through browser hijack. There might be three ways. One is obviously host file. It redefines the address of the trusted source through software package and upgrades. And it can also attack the home page, redefine the page that opens up when you start your browser. Error page, define the pages that opens when the error occurs. And also the search page. Redefine the page that opens up when you enter an undefined URL. Redefine the page that opens up when you click your search button. Now, why the last one is more dangerous? As because imagine you come across with this kind of a dubious search engine, and you want to search for, say, for an example, State Bank of India online banking. You never know which site may appear on the top of their search result. You know the logic their crawler bot, I mean the way their crawler bot function, if in at all any crawler bot is working for them, it's not completely fake one, or you don't even know the algorithm they use to use for indexing those sites, right? It may be completely false, completely fake. Malware and adware. Malware obviously refers to a variety of malicious software, including viruses, worms, Trojan horses, ransomwares, etc. And adwares, I mean software that displays advertisements tuned to the user's current activity, potentially reporting the aggregate or anonymized browsing behavior to a third party. Basically, they capture your browser keys and all. So one small piece of suggestion I would say that, I mean, try not to allow cookies from untrusted websites in your browser. Yeah, it is fact that some websites are like that. Say take an example of Facebook. They don't allow you to use their service until and unless you allow their cookies. You have to understand the way, that's the way, I mean, online business happens. I mean, Facebook is providing you service free of cost from where they're getting their money from, obviously by showing you ads, and how those ads are relevant. If you're sitting in Hyderabad, why aren't you seeing any ad from Hong Kong? Because the location is being tracked, your browsing habits are being tracked, and the relevant ads are shown to you. One way of password theft is keylogger. As it is visible, it can be of broad two categories: hardware keyloggers and software keyloggers. Hardware keyloggers obviously is visible. It may appear like those devices which is on your screen. It may be both, serial or maybe a USB. And those keyloggers have got internal memories, I mean flash memory, just like your pen drive and all. Now, software keyloggers, you can only, look at their presence at the task manager simply by pressing Alt Control 10 and look at the processes and applications running into your system. If you come across something suspicious, you can always Google search for this application and it will give you the result. I mean, it can be API based, which hooks into the operating system and capture keystroke. Software keyloggers can be kernel based, intercept the keystroke via modified broadband driver, keyboard driver, beg your pardon. It can be also form grabbing kind of, which intercepts the waveform data before it's sent to the internet. Here are the most commonly used software keyloggers. List are there. I've also shared two of screenshots of two of them. So I'm skipping this part because anyways this content will be shared to you and have a detailed study afterwards. It's only, I mean, Spring's keylogger, key inspector, actual keylogger. Some, I mean, not all of them were developed for the purpose of illegal activity. Some of them are also required. Once again, from the second one, the name itself, you can understand the purpose of it. Just to see the browsing habit, to inspect the browsing habits of the younger people in the home, or maybe to even some organization keyloggers may be used to track the browsing habit or any possible violation of respective IT policy within the organization. Now, while investigating the keylogger, I mean, you can look at the registry ID of it, but if you straight away go to Regedit, you won't see them. You have to open up the registry viewer, maybe with the help of certain forensic tools. Maybe it may be CyberCheck, it may be forensic toolkit, or some open source tools like Autopsy and all. And over there, you have to look at the registry viewer and you will find the traces of possible keyloggers. Now, here are a few examples of infected machines. You will find suspicious run key entry and also some keylogger entry as well. Another way is an indirect way, you can say, to identify whether your system is having any keylogger into it. Now see, keylogger creates prefetch files, which are actually captured or sent back to the originator. Okay. This prefetch files actually contains those information, that the information those originator or the attacker was looking for. It may be your password or maybe some other information. It depends on the purpose of it. Okay. So this, if you come across these .pf files, then you should be suspicious whether there is any keyloggers are there or not. The driver location, I mean the folder location that I've also shared under Windows, there will be a folder called prefetch. Now, similarly, from registry, I mean, though I'm skipping a bit, but a similar way of investigation, so that's why I have kept these two slides together. Even existence of Trojan horses can be tracked in system registry. Now, over here, that's a clean system. That's why whether you open up Firefox or Chrome or any other browser, you won't find anything other than the default entry. However, if the system has been tampered with unusual entries at the browser integrity check, then there is a presence of Trojan. Now, how Trojan works? That's the life cycle, you can say. Now, attacker, it has got fundamentally three components. Number one is a dropper. Then there's a Trojan packet, the actual exploit, the bomb itself, and then a common executable file. That's the wrapper of it, the cover of that bomb. Okay, and these three parts are combined together and wrapped, and with the way of spamming or any other technique. I mean, people are innovative. It reaches to the victim system. The moment the victim opens up that common executable file, over here I have taken an example of Ludo game. The dropper activates and it drops the Trojan file in the system. That's the way, simple word you can say, a Trojan box works. coming to phishing mails. I mean, days are gone when phishing mail used to mean only this online lotteries. Like everybody knows those are phishing mails. But what if we talk about all other contents? It may be a job offer, it may be a work from home offer, it may be a tax refund. I mean, you are suspicious if you receive an email stating you have won $10 million, but after submitting your tax return in the month of July, in the September, if you receive an email stating that you have some $1,000 of tax refund, probably many of us won't be that much suspicious, right? So those methods have been adopted by the fraudster as well. Once again, fund transfer request, free gift, shopping deals, dating or marriage proposal, free PC checkup, antivirus, free utility software, games, free music, movies, free pornography, business deals, charity proposal. In one word, anything and everything which can be lucrative to someone is a phishing email. Now, please understand, phishing emails can be, in the background, the phishing mail can be of fundamentally two categories. One is when it's targeted to many, then obviously the contents are very generic. And when it's targeted to one particular individual, then obviously once again the mail content, the fraudulent part of it is also very personal kind of a thing and a tailor-made kind of a thing. Now, how do attackers get email IDs? Obviously, software-based searches, buying email directories, or even using spyware. If my system is infected with spyware, probably the spyware is capturing my phone book, email address book, beg your pardon. And also, they can use tools. Those tools as as well as available in internet free of cost. You can also try for your just for experiment. Please do not do that. To harm anybody. And it works like that. Many a times we break our head thinking about or pondering about how the hell this attacker had got my mail ID. He hasn't got that mail ID from any of those sources, even the sources I have mentioned in the upper row of this slide. It might be randomly generated, just like that. You put up the first name and second name, it will randomly generate mail IDs. And once those mail IDs are generated, now, as I have shown you, using online services like Mail Tester, it can be verified which of them are existing and non-existing. Okay. The second category of screening and selecting the target may happen once those existing mail IDs were identified by using some online or some other way. At first go, the attacker may send some subscription mail kind of a thing, fake subscription mail. Maybe offering certain proposal, maybe offering certain subscription or some option, XYZ. It will have two buttons, accept, reject, subscribe, unsubscribe. In either of the case, people who are clicking on, reject, accept, they are gone for sure. Even people who are clicking on accept, they are also putting themselves on danger. Number one, you never know by clicking on that particular email body, your system may get affected with some Trojan horse, or at least you are sending back a message to the attacker that you are not that tech savvy. You don't understand the much nitty-gritties about the security part of it. So you got a signal that you are an easy target, essentially. Now, mechanism of phishing. First of all, the attacker needs a web server to host a fake web page. Once that phishing website or fake web page has been hosted, he sends spam emails, SMSs containing phishing links to their target. It can be one or many depending on the basic type of the phishing attack. And if they reciprocates with the respective critical information. It may be the password or any other kind of information. Those are captured at some data collection point and obviously been accessed by the attacker. One small exercise I have shown using, to generate a phishing website using social engineering tool in Kali Linux environment. I beg your pardon, I'm showing this on screenshot mode because at this point of time, I don't have that Linux system handy with me. Anyways, and also thought that, as because this materials will be given to you, this screenshot may also be a little more handy for your future references. Obviously, for any kind of attack, we are using hypervisor like VirtualBox or VMware kind of a thing environment only. We are using that Linux. Then we are opening the social engineering toolkit. To open ACT, go to the application, social engineering tools, click ACT, and that is social engineering tool. When it's open, it will ask if we agree with the terms of uses. Obviously, it says that it's not for the purpose of some offensive thing. It's more for penetration testing kind of thing, not to attack someone, to do illegal stuff. We have to type yes or Y, Y basically, as shown in the following screenshot. Then comes the social engineering attack. Most of the menus shows following screenshots are self-explained, and among them, most important is the number one, there is social engineering attack. You can see that third-party modules are there, after the social engineering toolkit is there, the options are there. So over here, we're looking for social engineering attack. Then we have to, we are going for the spear phishing module. It allows to specify the corrupt email message and send them to our target victims with attached file format malicious payload. And there are two options through spear phishing attack. Number one is obviously performing a mass email attack, or two, create a file format payload as and a social engineering template. The first one is letting ACT to do everything for us, which obviously I will prefer at this point of time. The second one is to create our own file format payload and use it on your own attack, right? Then, we have to, infectious USB CD debugging. This approach over there, you can also launch a baiting kind of an attack. Let me explain what is baiting. What is baiting is, sometimes you may come across certain unattended CDs, DVDs, or even pen drives are left in public places. Now, those devices are actually infected with some malware, right? Now, those kind of malware can also be created. Fundamentally, those malwares are basically spyware. They capture your login credentials or any other private information and sends back to the originator. Anyways, now over here also, we have an option of going for the mass emailer and also email attack. The mass mailer attack will allow us to send multiple emails to victims and customize the message. And there are two options on the mass emailer. The first one is to send an email to single email address. The second option allows us to import a list of that has all recipient emails, and it will send our message to as many as we want within the list. You recall our previous activities where we have generated email IDs using tools, then redefine, refine those email IDs using online service like Mail Tester. Now that we have got that list handy with it, now I'm using it to send those phishing emails. Okay. Now I'm selecting our social engineering attack once again and website attack vector. Obviously, as I'm looking for password theft, I will choose credential harvester attack.
Yes. We have already passed the time allocated to you. 10 minutes back. So I'll request you just kindly join.
Okay, I will just quickly go through it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you select, I mean, this credential harvesting fundamentally means, stealing your password. Credential is password, harvesting is stealing over here. Anyways, you will come across three options. One is web template, site cloner, and custom import. Web templates, basically the ACT tool itself is having certain ready-made templates available within its module. You can directly use them, or you can, the second option is site cloner. Over here, you can simply put the URL of the site for which you want to fake. You have to give that URL to it. It will clone that site, or you can, if you have yourself have designed certain page, you can use that in the custom import option, right? Now you have to also put the destination IP, the attacker's IP, to harvest the password from. I mean, once that password has been captured, where this password will be sent, and you have. I have selected over there is Google, and also try to clone the present site, and here is the phishing site is ready. But once again, as you understand, oh, by the way, one part I have missed out, that we need a host as well to host that fake web page, right? Now, once again, in this attack, I want to, as an attacker, I want to be as particular as I can be. Quite obviously, this phishing site won't have a similar, won't have a same URL of original Google or any other whatever site I'm cloning at this point of time. So to hide that or to cover that part, we can use that URL shortening services like bit.ly or tinyurl to cover my phishing URL and send it, have a link via spam emails, message, or social media posts, so on and so forth. As you can see, once someone has tried to log in into that fake Gmail page, their login credential has been captured and sent back to the IP address I have defined as attacker's IP address. Okay. Now here is a product, you can say, of the project itself under which this particular training program is going on. A beautiful web portal developed by NIT Surathkal. Over there, you can check or test any suspicious URL, whether it's a phishing URL or not. The link is given there. And also another kind of identity theft is tab nipping. I mean, that was also an option. If you can see over there, number 4, tab napping attack method. Now, fundamentally means secretly changing the content of any one of your inactive tab while during a browsing session. The moment you go back to that tampered tab, you may come across a message of session expiry, which may not happen actually. Now that message is a fake message. The moment you click on OK, you come across to the login page of that particular site. Once again, that login page is also a fake one. You know, the point you give your login credential, that has been captured. Now, as a user, if I want to remain safe from tab napping attack, what I can do best is that if I'm not 100% sure about the safety of the security part of my browser, the moment I come across some session expiry notice, I straight away close the tab and reopen it. If it was logged in, it will open in logged in situation, logged in condition, other than certain banking websites. And if it has logged out, no point in, logging once again. Now, there are a few more slides, but I think that my time won't permit me to cover the man-in-the-middle attack. However, I've tried to prepare my slide, step by step writing, what it to be done along with screenshot. And I hope you can have fair enough idea if you go through the slide by your own as well. So with this, I will conclude my session at this point of time. Thank you for your patient listening. What do you want?
Thank you, Saurabh, for an interesting and basic concepts what you have shown for exploitation techniques. I believe that will be helpful for uh, the participants. Uh, I'll request participants if they have any questions regarding this exploitation techniques. They may just ask Saurabh. Dipankar,